Hello all, thank you for joining me here today again. Today we're going to make a second journal card to go with the little vintage style journal that I've been working on in a series, and some of you might have watched previous episodes already. In the last main one, which I posted I think about 2 or 3 days ago, we created this one using distress pencils. Today's one is going to be much simpler. I've done one of them already ahead of time to save time, and we're going to do a third one now in a very similar technique to this one. So what we're going to use is a collection of distress inks, 2 different colors of archival inks, some embellishments which I'll gather together, and then a stencil and a stamp. This stamp comes from a little collection that I've had in my stash for ages. I honestly don't know who makes them. They're pretty cheap, they stamp pretty well, and I'll try and link them for you below. But I'm going to clear the space a bit and then we'll get on to the actual making of the journal card. Now, I'd like my journal cards to have rounded corners. Of course, that's not a requirement at all. It's just what you like. You could cut them by hand. Most people probably will have some kind of a corner rounder in their stash. Indeed, I have several ones. And the one I'm going to use today is this one. And what I like about this one is that it's got different sizes. So the ones I've been using, the one that I've been using for the other one was the 7mm. So that's the one I'll be using today. Now, what I've learned, and others of you might have experienced this as well, is this particular one, what works by far the best is if you turn it over before you stick your card in, so that you can see exactly where it's going. So let me quickly round the corners and then we go on. Alright, so let's get started on our journal card. Now, unlike the first one, where we stamped first and then spent a long time turning it round, colouring it, creating depth with our distress pencils, and then made a sort of subtle background, this time we're going to do it the other way around. It's actually a much simpler and quicker technique. And so we're going to create the background first. The 3 colours I've selected are speckled egg, bundled sage, and pumice stone. And I'm going to start by just using the blending technique that we've looked at before and creating a background, and we'll take it from there. You'll see what will happen. So I'm going to start with speckled egg. And like I've done before, I'm going to actually do it very carefully, starting from the middle, because this is my lightest colour, and I want to move from light to dark, so that I have an opening to put the stamped image when we get to that. So let's get going. Very gently, carefully, so that we don't create these horrible heavy rings. And this is probably already enough for a first layer. So on to the next colour, which is going to be bundled sage. And this time I feel I can come in already from the outside, overlapping the blue, doesn't matter, creates another interesting colour coming from the other side. I'm sure you've seen this many times before. So I'm going to stop talking and just doing, and you'll see what happens. I mean, these distress colors, they are just magic. doesn't matter what kind of cheap background paper you use. And like I said in a previous video, this is just a cut-to size old file folder. All right, stage number 1. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a water bottle, a spritzer, and just do a very subtle, quick spritz like this. Let it dry a bit, and then I would use a heat gun and dry it off, but I'm not going to do that in front of you this time. So I'll do that and then we'll come. All right, I don't know whether you can see, but we actually have incredibly subtle textures already, but I'm now going to deepen the color by adding more layers. And adding another spritz of water, letting it soak in for a bit. Maybe use some kitchen roll to dab it up, and they have very subtle effect. Now let's make that effect a little bit more pronounced. This time I drip some water on my craft sheet and just do dab, dab, dab again, and then, okay, I will quickly dry in front of you, dry it off. And some more texture. Perfect. I think this is enough because we don't want the background to be too pronounced so that the stamp images will still come out. So next step would be to use a stencil. I'm going to use the same stencil as I used for the other two so that they form a unity, because remember they're going to fit in these pockets, which then in time will be glued into our journal. So for my stenciling, I like to use stencil brushes. We've talked about that before. So I'll do that again, and I'm going to mostly use bundled sage, I think, and then maybe I'll use a brown around the edges. We'll see how we go. Like usual, trying to avoid straight edges. Oop, behave yourself. And a little bit in this corner. And I think that's just about enough already. Can you see that I've created so far a similar background effect as on this one? So now we come to the stamping bit. And the stamp that I'm going to use is this, what do you call it? I think it's a teasel. But, you know, like I've said before, I'm not British. Might be totally wrong. So let me close my inks. Always a good idea. Ink up my stamp. And I will try and explain to you in a minute. But this time I'm not going to emboss it. Even though the image probably would come out better if I did. But hopefully you'll see in a minute why I won't do that this time. So I'll position it a bit at an angle. Give it a good press. And I think that's pretty cool. Isn't that a lovely stamp? I just love this stamp. Anyway, what would have happened if I'd embossed it? because this one is pretty solid, I would just have had a big plasticky shiny layer, which really I don't want on this occasion. In a moment, I am going to use one of the distress pencils again and color this in, but I'm first going to do another one sort of at a slight angle, like I did here, yeah? And then we'll do a bit of coloring, but you'll see that in a moment. So, put it at a bit of an angle, and then we're just about good to go. I hope. Yeah, I'm happy with that. So, we'll carry on. So, just one pencil this time. Like last time, I'll go over it and just do a tiny subtle bit of colouring, and then maybe also create a little bit of a shadow. See, with this particular stamp, the depth is there already. Can you see how it's darker on this side and on that side? So I don't need to create that with my colouring, because it's basically there already. A tiny bit more, a bit here. And what I might do with what I will do with the stem, excuse me about that, is use my fine liner pen just to make it a bit more pronounced. Same here, just very subtle. Just a little bit more definition, not too much. And I think that's enough already. So, on to the next step. Now, as I'm really trying to add a partner to this one, you may just be able to see there is some background stamping here. So I'm going to use the same stamp for this one, which is a Tim Holtz one. So, ink it up. And like usual, when doing this background text stamping, I'm not going to bother about a stamping block or anything, just making sure it's the right way round and not upside down, and then just, press it down here and maybe a little bit here and a tiny bit there. Okay, now the final step is to add some embellishments, yeah, like I've done here. So I looked out a few bits and pieces, and because we're working vintage style, I'm going to edge them all with brown. These are all from Tim Holtz snippets, and this is from the new Tim Holtz stamp stickers. I'm sure many of you will have seen them. Now, because the stamp is at the top here, I thought here I put it at the bottom, and just for fun I'm going to put this number snippet in a different direction, like so. Then, like usual, I'm getting it slightly squint, I thought I'd use a tiny bit of this text paper. I should have put that down first, but I forgot. Never mind. Also just ink it a bit. Stick it down, overlap it a bit. It doesn't really matter, just whatever is pleasing to your eye. And then maybe this little label like that. And then we balance it all out with the stamp here at the bottom. That's enough. Bit higher, maybe there. And this thing sticks already, of course, because it's a sticker. I kept this one green to go with the green stamping, so I picked a brown one to go with the brown stamping. Yeah, and the brilliant thing about these stickers is, I'm sure you've seen it, they come in lots of different colors. So, there we are. That's it for today's installment. In the final section, I hope I can finally finish this whole project. Yeah, we'll stick this in. We'll create something here. We finish the stenciling, and then we put something of the simple things on the back there. But for now, I'm going to leave you with this. Like always, thank you so much for coming by. Have a creative day, and I hope to see you next time.